Disclaimer: this story contains mature themes intended for adult viewers. Viewer discretion is advised. The soft glow of the bedroom lamp spilled over her skin, catching the sheen of the lotion she had just rubbed along her shoulders. The air was quiet, thick with the warmth of a late evening, when the day felt heavy yet intimate. Her husband leaned against the doorframe, his gaze lingering, not with urgency, but with that quiet curiosity only someone deeply familiar with another's every little gesture could hold. She didn't speak. Neither did he. Instead, the silence between them said enough. How his eyes followed the slow trace of her hand along her collarbone, how her breath caught for just a moment when she felt his presence move closer. The lotion felt cool against her warm skin, slick between her fingers as it slid unexpectedly lower, tracing along her side before slipping from her grip. A soft laugh escaped her, but it was met with the kind of look that made her heartbeat skip. His hand brushed hers, steadying the bottle before it fell, his fingers warm, rough from the day's work, pressing lightly into hers as if to hold that moment a little longer. They were close now, too close for words, but not quite close enough to cross that invisible line they both felt tugging at them. His breath was there, near her ear, the faintest trace of cologne and the day clinging to him. Her lips parted, ready to break the tension, but no words came out. The room felt smaller suddenly, the air charged with something unspoken. The lotion was still there, slick against their skin where their hands had met. It lingered, like the moment itself, undecided, hanging in the air. She shifted, turning slightly, her shoulder brushing against his chest now. A simple touch, yet it sent a ripple through the quiet. Her mind raced with the question she couldn't ask, and his hand, still there, didn't pull away. There was a choice hanging between them, one that neither was ready to make just yet, but both knew they were about to. And then, he moved just a little closer. The air between them grew heavier, the kind of quiet that felt alive with questions neither dared to voice. Her fingertips still tingled where they had brushed his, and she could feel the faint imprint of his touch lingering like a whisper. He didn't move away. If anything, he leaned in a little more, his presence a steady warmth behind her. The faint scent of his skin mixed with the lotion's delicate aroma, and for a moment, the world outside their room ceased to matter. Her eyes lifted slowly to meet his. There was no rush, no words, just that deep, searching look that felt like it saw more than what was on the surface. It was the kind of gaze that remembered late nights spent talking about dreams, mornings where silence was enough, and moments like this, when closeness spoke louder than anything else. Her breath caught as his hand reached up, not to take, but to brush a stray lock of hair from her face. His fingers lingered near her cheek, the pad of his thumb grazing her skin, sending a warmth that had nothing to do with the room's temperature. But beneath that tenderness, there was something else, something she couldn't quite name. Was it hesitation? Desire tangled with doubt? Or maybe the weight of unspoken things between them that neither had dared to unravel? She shifted slightly, pulling the sheet closer against her body, more out of instinct than modesty. His eyes followed the movement, and a faint smile tugged at the corner of his lips, soft, knowing, but unreadable. The lotion still clung to her palms, making her skin slick as she set the bottle aside. Her hands rested on her lap, but her shoulders leaned ever so slightly toward him, betraying what her words wouldn't. "Long day?" she whispered finally, her voice soft but charged with everything left unsaid. He only nodded, his gaze still fixed on her, as if the answer was less important than the way her question sounded, like an invitation, like a pause waiting to be filled. And then, without warning, his hand found hers again, not forceful, not rushed, but sure. The room seemed to pulse with that small contact, the kind that carried more promise than any kiss. The tension didn't break. It deepened. The quiet stretched, but it was no longer the kind of silence that felt empty. It was alive, dense with unspoken words, with a pull neither of them seemed ready to break free from. Her pulse thrummed in her chest, and each passing second only made it louder in her ears. His fingers lingered at her wrist, light and deliberate, as if testing the distance between a simple touch and something that might mean more. Her breath hitched, not from surprise, but from the slow realization of how close they had drifted without even trying. She tilted her head, eyes catching the faint reflection of the bedside lamp in his gaze. There was a softness there, yes, but also something guarded, like he was holding back a piece of himself. She wondered what it was this time. The stress he never spoke about. The way his thoughts wandered at night when he thought she was asleep. "Is something wrong?" she murmured, the question barely more than a whisper. His lips curved into a faint, almost evasive smile. "Not wrong, just a lot on my mind." The way he said it made her want to press further, to close that gap with more than just words. But instead, she stayed still, feeling the warmth of his hand retreat, only slightly, as if he, too, couldn't decide if letting go was the right move. She shifted on the bed, tucking her legs beneath her. The satin fabric whispered against her skin, and she noticed his eyes flicker at the sound, at the motion. He caught himself and looked away, but not fast enough. Something in her stirred at that, an ache, a craving for the version of them that didn't hesitate like this. The version that laughed louder, touched easier, spoke without that careful filter. "You've been distant lately," she said quietly, her tone neither accusing nor pleading, just honest. His jaw tightened. For a heartbeat, she thought he wouldn't answer. Then, finally, "I've been trying to figure out what we need, what I need." Her fingers tightened around the sheet. There it was, that slip of vulnerability, raw and unfinished, hanging in the air between them. And yet, even with that weight, the space between them felt charged in a different way now, like every inch closer might bring answers neither of them were ready to face, but both secretly wanted. His hand brushed her knee this time, almost absent-mindedly, but it sent a spark up her spine all the same. He didn't pull away. She didn't move. Whatever he was holding back, it wasn't gone, it was there, coiled tight, waiting for the moment it would finally break through. The room felt smaller now, as though the walls themselves were inching closer, pressing them into a moment neither could easily escape. Her breath came a little slower, heavier, and the space between their bodies was barely a whisper. His hand, still resting lightly against her knee, began to trace idle patterns against the satin fabric, nothing deliberate, nothing spoken, yet every brush of his fingers sent a quiet shiver through her. Her skin seemed to react before her mind could catch up, heat blooming in places his touch hadn't even reached yet. She met his gaze again, and this time, neither of them looked away. There was no pretense left, only that raw, almost electric pull that made the air hum between them. The faint sound of rain tapping against the window made everything feel more enclosed, more intimate, as though the world outside was fading. He leaned in, not enough to close the gap, but enough for his breath to warm her cheek. The smell of him, clean, familiar, tinged with something darker tonight, wrapped around her like a thread pulling tighter. "Sometimes," he murmured, voice low and steady, "you make it hard to think straight." Her fingers gripped the edge of the sheet tighter, the fabric twisting beneath her palm. "Do I?" The words left her softer than she intended, almost inviting without meaning to. He let out a quiet laugh, barely audible, more felt than heard. His hand didn't leave her knee, instead, it slid just slightly, a movement so subtle yet deliberate enough to set her heart racing. There was no rush between them, but every second they waited felt like a decision in itself. She could feel the thrum of her own heartbeat in her throat, in her fingertips, in the space between their breaths. She wanted to say something, to break the tension or maybe to surrender to it, but the words never came. His eyes held hers with a promise he didn't speak, and in that promise was a question: how much longer would they dance on this edge? The answer, she knew, was coming soon. The air felt charged, almost too still, like the quiet just before a storm. Her fingers tightened slightly around the sheet, but she didn't pull away. His hand, warm and steady against her knee, lingered there like an unanswered question. Then came a sound, his phone buzzing faintly on the nightstand. One glance from her was enough to catch it, a message lighting up the screen with a name she didn't recognize. The letters burned into her mind even though she said nothing. He noticed her eyes shift, followed the line of her gaze, and for a fraction of a second, his expression changed. It wasn't guilt, at least, not in the way one might expect, but it was something close to guarded. "You're quiet," he said, his tone low, almost as if trying to pull her attention back. She swallowed, forcing her eyes to meet his again. "Who was that?" The words were simple, but they carried the weight of something deeper, something fragile between them. He hesitated. "Just a heartbeat." But it was long enough. "Work," he answered finally, almost too quickly. It shouldn't have mattered. It was late, they were here, and yet, that pause had already planted a seed. Her mind flickered with questions she didn't want to ask, and still, his hand remained on her. The warmth of his touch now felt like both a tether and a test. She wanted to lean in, to believe him, to push the thought away, but part of her couldn't stop watching his eyes, looking for a truth he wasn't giving freely. He noticed the shift in her, the way her shoulders tensed ever so slightly. "You don't believe me," he murmured, softer this time, closer. "I didn't say that," she replied, though her voice was thinner than before. He exhaled, a slow, controlled breath, and this time, his hand moved, not away, but higher, fingers brushing the side of her thigh through the satin. It wasn't forceful, it was a plea. A reminder. "I'm here," he said quietly. "With you. Isn't that what matters?" And just like that, the pull between them became something different, not just want, but need tangled with doubt. Her heart raced for all the wrong reasons and all the right ones at once. The rain outside thickened, drumming softly against the glass as if echoing the tension building inside. She didn't know whether to pull back or give in, but one thing was certain, the night wasn't going to stay still much longer. The rain outside softened, its steady rhythm now a quiet backdrop to the storm still lingering between them. Her eyes flicked once more to the glowing phone, then back to him. The tension that had held them apart began to shift, not disappearing, but transforming. He reached for the phone, turned it face down without unlocking it, and set it aside. His gaze found hers again, steady and unflinching. "It wasn't what you think," he said, voice low, almost a confession. "I've been planning something, for us." Her breath hitched, not because she believed him immediately, but because the way he said it held no defense, only sincerity. "For us," she whispered, the doubt still there, but softer now. He nodded, leaning in until his forehead rested against hers. "I've been trying to fix the spaces between us. Trying to bring back what felt like it was slipping." The words broke through her guard, inch by inch. The warmth of his skin against hers, the way his hand moved from her thigh to her waist, gentle, deliberate, felt less like temptation and more like a plea to reconnect. She exhaled slowly, her fingers lifting to his chest, feeling the steady thrum beneath his shirt. "Then show me," she said, barely audible, but enough to shift everything. He didn't rush. Instead, he closed the last bit of space with a touch that was both patient and charged, a palm at her back, pulling her closer until she felt the familiar press of his heartbeat against hers. The scent of rain and warm skin wrapped around them, and for the first time that night, the doubt loosened its grip. The kiss came not as a demand, but as a promise, slow, warm, carrying everything they hadn't said. The tension didn't vanish, it deepened, sharpened into something alive. And in that moment, with the world blurred by rain and the night thick with their shared breath, she realized the twist wasn't about the message or the doubt, it was that beneath it all, they had both been aching for the same thing, to feel each other again, fully, without the distance they had built. The rain had eased into a gentle drizzle, the kind that whispered against the window and left the world soft around its edges. Their foreheads rested together, breath mingling in the quiet that followed, no longer tense, just full. She let her fingers slide higher, resting against his chest where his heartbeat still raced beneath her touch. For the first time that evening, it wasn't about questioning his presence, it was about feeling it, steady and real. He lifted his hand, tucking a strand of hair behind her ear, his thumb tracing her jawline as if memorizing the moment. "I didn't want the space to grow between us," he said gently. "Not tonight, not ever." Her lips curved into a faint smile, soft and almost shy. "I thought maybe you already had one foot out the door," she admitted, her voice breaking just slightly with the weight of her earlier doubt. His eyes met hers, unwavering. "Never." It wasn't loud, but it was certain. They stayed like that for a while, no rushing, no pretenses. Just the warmth of his palm at her back, the quiet thud of their hearts finding the same rhythm again. When he kissed her this time, it was slower, fuller, with the kind of intention that didn't ask for permission, it offered it. The world outside faded completely, the drizzle, the distant hum of city lights, even the phone still face down on the nightstand. There was only this, her, him, the space between them finally bridged with something simple and true. She leaned into him, her hands resting at his neck, fingers grazing his skin as if to anchor herself. "Let's stop overthinking everything," she whispered. "Let's just be here, like this." He nodded against her forehead, a soft chuckle escaping as if a weight had been lifted. "I can do that." The night didn't end with fireworks. It ended with quiet laughter, with shared warmth beneath the sheets, with the kind of intimacy that wasn't loud or rushed but deep, rooted in a choice to stay, to feel, to try again. By the time the rain stopped completely, they had found their stillness. Not perfect. Not flawless. But real. And in that realness was the kind of closeness both had been craving all along.